Welcome to day 2 of Queer Durations. Really thrilled to be with you all for this amazing gathering. My name is Leon Hilton. I'm a faculty member in the Department of Theater Arts and Performance Studies here, and a member of the curatorial team for this event, which has been a massive but wonderful undertaking to be engaged in over the last year plus, and it's so wonderful that it's all finally coming to fruition. So we really want to thank the Department of Theater Arts and Performance Studies, the Brown Arts Institute, as well as sponsorship from co-sponsorship from the Pembroke Center's Faculty Seed Grant Program, the Department of American Studies, and the U.S. Latino Studies Fund for their support for this event. Just wanted to say a couple of sort of general reminders. So first, there is a QR code in the printed program that will link you to a digital program, which has bios and a lot of information about all of the wonderful participants in the symposium. So please do check out the digital program. We have a very packed schedule today. There's a lot going on. In addition to the panel this morning, there's also going to be a discussion at 1:30 about the work of Julie Tolentino in this auditorium, so please come back for that. There will be performance activations happening all day, throughout the day, in the Cohen Gallery upstairs as part of Julie Tolentino's course that she's been teaching for us this fall. And there's also an amazing video program curated by J.D. Stokely that's playing on all the levels of the building, so please do check it out. It's really incredible. At 3, technically the performance starts at 3:30, but the doors are going to open at 3. We are going to have a performance by XCSN. That's a pretty limited capacity room, so we do encourage you to arrive early if you would like to see that performance. It is a kind of first come, first serve situation, so we encourage you to come early. There may be some possibilities of people coming in and out, but we're trying to limit that a little bit. So we do invite you to arrive early if you want to attend that performance. And then at 7 p.m., we have a performance by Elliot Reed, which is happening in the Fishman Studio upstairs as well. So I think without further ado, I'm very happy to hand things over to my colleague, Thea Tagle, who's going to be moderating our panel this morning.
Hi, everyone. Is this okay? Level. I'm going to keep the intro remarks pretty short, really just reading the bios so we can go straight into these amazing presentations by 3 of the leading curators in the United States of performance arts, Adrienne Edwards, Shoghig Halajian, and Lia Gangitano. As Leon said, I'm Thea Quiray Tagle. I am the Associate Curator of the Brown Arts Institute and the Bell Gallery. We have an exhibition over there if you want to make a trek across campus, a really beautiful show by Franklin Williams, which was curated by our chief curator, Kay Kratzen. So yes, I'm just going to read the bios, and the flow of the event will be each curator will speak for roughly 15 minutes or so. We'll have hopefully time for a short conversation between the 3 of them that I'll moderate, but we also want to make time for your questions, and I'm sure there will be many about their practice and perhaps about some of the amazing artists that they've worked with as well. The full bios for these curators, because they're quite extensive, can be found in the digital program, but I do think it's important, right, to give them, the intros they deserve. So I'll go in the order of presentations here. First up today will be Adrienne Edwards, who is the Engell Speyer Family Senior Curator and Associate Director of Curatorial Programs at the Whitney Museum of American Art, where she most recently curated, and is still up, Edges of Eiley, which opened in September 2024. Edwards has been working as a curator at the Whitney since 2018. She co-curated the Whitney Biennial 2022, Quiet as It's Kept, and enhanced the strength and vitality of the museum's performance program. Since 2021, she's also served as the Whitney's Director of Curatorial Affairs. In 2022, Adrienne was the president of the international jury of the 59th Venice Biennale, as well as a jury member for the 40th anniversary edition of Video Brazil in 2023. Edwards' curatorial projects have also included the thematic, intergenerational, and interdisciplinary exhibition and catalog, Blackness and Abstraction, presented at Pace Gallery, Moved by the Motion, Sudden Rise, 2020, a series of performances based on a text co-written by Wu Sang, Boychild, and Fred Moten at the Whitney, and the performance collective My Barbarians, 20th anniversary edition and exhibition and catalog at the Whitney and ICA LA. She holds a PhD in performance studies from NYU. Shoghig Halajian is a curator and scholar based in Brooklyn, New York. Her curatorial work and writings focus on queer and feminist histories, contemporary performance practices, and placemaking through the lens of diaspora and dispersion. She's co-editor of Georgia, an online journal in collaboration with Anthony Carfello and Susie Halajian, and serves on the board of directors at Human Resources LA. From 2013-2016, Halajian was assistant director at Los Angeles Contemporary Exhibitions. Recent curatorial projects have included A Grammar Built with Rocks, co-curated with Susie Halajian at Human Resources, One Archives at the USC Libraries, and Red Cat 2018. At Night, The States, co-curated with Susie Halajian at Hammer Museum 2017. Descent, What They Fear is the Light, co-curated with Thomas Lawson, Lace 2016. And Rafa Esparza, I've Never Been Here Before, Lace 2015. She is a PhD candidate in the Department of Art History, Theory, and Criticism with a critical gender studies specialization at UC San Diego, and is currently a visiting lecturer in the Department of Art and Art History at Williams College and the School of Art and Design History and Theory at New School. And then finally, we'll hear from Lia Gangitano, who founded Participant Inc. in 2001, a not-for-profit art space presenting exhibitions by Virgil Marti, Charles Atlas, Kathy Burkhart, Michael Otter, and Renee Green, among others. As former curator of Thread Waxing Space, New York, her exhibitions, screenings, and performances have included Spectacular Optical, Luther Prince, Imitation of Life, Borsethra, Module for Mood, and Sigalit Landau. She's editor of Dead Flowers, 2010, and the forthcoming anthology, The Alternative to What? Thread Waxing Space in the 90s. As an associate curator, she co-curated Dress Codes and Boston School for the ICA Boston and edited New Histories and Boston School. She's contributed to publications including Renee Green, Endless Streams and Time-Based Streams, Lovett/Cotignon, Whitney Biennial 2006, Day for Night, and 2012 Whitney Biennial on Charles Atlas. She served as curatorial advisor for MoMA PS1 with exhibitions including Lutz Batcher, My Secret Life in 2009. Okay, without further ado, please welcome our panelists.
Thank you, Lia, for moderating and getting us here and work on this program. I really want to thank Julie. What a joy to be here on the occasion of your work. And Leon, it's for those two that I came to Brown because, you know, Leon is also NYU PS or performance studies person, and we kind of roll a little bit like a cult. So that's why I'm here today. And I've often said that I would have very little to put in a museum if it weren't for Lia Gangitano. So thank you, Lia, for your work. I think what I wanted to do today is just like really quickly within the scope of 10 minutes try to tell you about 3 projects that I feel like on the occasion of the topic of queer duration seems particularly interesting to me or raises interesting questions. And then I'll show a 4-minute video and pass the baton. In the spirit of performance studies, when I first had my first academic conference as a grad student there, I asked Jose Munoz, my advisor, whom I called Papa Doc. I said, and he would say in the Haitian way, and I said, Yeah. He kind of got a kick out of that. Like, but which one? Papa Doc. But yeah, so he said, I said, well, how is it? It was a CAA conference. And I said, how is this going to be different? How is my contribution as someone coming from performance studies different than what art historians are talking about? And he said, oh, you'll know when you're in the room. And I have carried that with me my entire career. In some ways, I feel like it has become a very useful way to even think about what it is I'm doing in a gallery, that it is different, that it should be made to feel different, et cetera, that it has a certain sensuality and also a certain kind of rigor that might distinguish it from what other people do in an art museum. That said, My Barbarian, I noticed that they were coming up on 20 years of work when I arrived at the Whitney. And I was thinking in terms of this set of commissions that I was putting together about the sightedness of the Whitney, its history being right on the piers, how many artists have made work thinking about the piers and queer life and thriving there and precarity there. So there was a way in which they seemed to, even though they were out of Los Angeles, to exemplify the spirit of that neighborhood in a very particular way. And I felt that they had made a body of work that, I don't know, I felt was deeply theoretically rigorous, very much attending to the history of theater with a capital T, and that they were kind of perfect because of their attunement to thinking about the relationship of performance and performance for the camera. And there was just so much there in their archive that I knew we had a lot to work with. So we engaged over a multi-year process of basically taking these 20 years and putting it into a single gallery and creating an experience really across 3 screens that could actually hold their work and represent it. So there were performances made especially for the camera that are included in this, I would say, movie-length experience in the gallery. There were also rehearsal footage. There was footage from live performance taking place in different contexts, and all of this played out over the course of these screens. And we took this idea of the 3 of them, Alejandro Segade, Malik Gaines, Jade Gordon, and let that kind of throuple of them actually inform the way the space was made. And then what really drove the museum crazy is that we asked that all the lighting be taken out and that theatrical lighting be brought into the space. So the whole thing sat as a theatrical experience in a way, and I'm just showing you some of these images and I can talk about, but it included selections from props and costumes and works of art, masks and drawings that were related to the different works, and they were lit dynamically changing according to what was showing on the videos. And we did 2 live performances as part of this show, and also a commission that is forthcoming that is a performance for the camera. I also invited Every Ocean Hughes, formerly Emily Roysden, because we had been in a deep conversation about the work that she was doing as a death doula, and thinking about it in relationships to networks of queer care that obviously not only goes back to the AIDS pandemic and the way in which the community rallied around one another for support and care, but to also like kind of use that as a way to think about like how do we do that networking and that supporting on an ongoing basis. So I saw it really as a project about love, and it felt Every wanted to go back and start with the photographs of the piers that she had begun in 2008 and continue to revisit until this year that we did this show, which was 2022. And this is an installation, that includes her revisiting of those piers with custom artist frames, and then we painted the walls in a very every way. And we're very insidious in terms of inserting it into different architectural spaces in the building. And this was a co-commission that we did with every Help the Dead that we performed. We also did a video installation for a week, One Big Bag, and we culminated with River, which was performed in our, so there was a presence in the Hess Gallery, which is situated outside of the theater, and then we had these taking place monthly over the course of the presentation of the works in the gallery. So they like function as pendants to one another. And then Edges of Ailey is a show that I have been working on for 6.5 years. It opened in September. I think for me, you know, it was sort of like a real question of why hasn't anyone done an exhibition about Alvin Ailey? But also doing that with a little bit of in a tongue-in-cheek way, actually, because within art history, we seem to be, in art museums and collecting, et cetera, we seem to be very comfortable around creating things that are about Judson Dance Theater or Judson adjacent, or of Kirstein. And when I say Judson adjacent, I'm thinking about someone like Merce Cunningham. But you need to be plotted into a certain kind of like art history. And I think because the art history that I might align and have aligned with Ailey Falls is already compromised within the context of an art institution, of course, then as a choreographer, he would be doubly so. But one of the things that I thought about a lot in putting this show together was how to keep very close to Ailey. The thing to know is that he is obsessed with just all kinds of forms of art. We found them in the notebooks. We were able to really keep very close to what he articulated in his notebooks. He divided the archive when he died from AIDS-related complications in '89, with anything related to the company going to the foundation, and all of his personal notebooks actually going to his dear friend, a lawyer and arts philanthropist in Kansas City, Alan Gray. And it is going through the thousands and thousands of pages in those notebooks that I decided to approach the show this way. There's a video surround, it's what you see floating in the background, but where we drew from the audiovisual archive, the moving images during Mr. Ailey's lifetime alone was at almost 200. So I worked with 2 filmmakers to create this montage that could tell his story and take you through key dances, including his influences and where he comes from, et cetera, et cetera. I'm gonna show you a clip at the very end that will actually, is where the video concludes. It's the last piece called For Alvin. But I've asked myself many times about how queerness appears in this show and like to what extent that we need to know that it's queer, or how much of the queerness is already so deeply because of who I am in my making. There would never be a question around like the blackness of it. And so I'm very curious about, I think this is something I've just been asking myself. So there are choices that, like here, when you have this constellation with Rotimi Fani Coyote, the photograph at the very top there in the center, is a Nigerian artist living in London who also dies from AIDS shortly after Mr. Ailey. But if you don't know him, how would you know, right? It's very, I mean, these are questions I'd be curious to talk about. I'm just showing you here just some images of the installation itself. Or here to the left, we have, Sam Doyle, who's a self-taught artist from the Sea Island, St. Helena in particular of South Carolina, where I'm from. And, you know, this one, here it says Lady. So nobody would think, and it's two women kissing. But his paintings are full of little naughty and also tender moments that are very queer. So this guy's getting his hair cut, but something else is happening too, if you look closely. And this is the Black Liberation section. And that wonderful Hammond's piece. In the surround, there's a real 80s moment that kind of shows you the protest of what was happening at the time in the early 80s. I mean, what's interesting about this is that, you know, the question of Mr. Ailey's being in the life was always kind of suspended. One of the joys of being in the archive, as I had suspected when I took this project on, is that when he was characterized as private, that he wasn't necessarily private. That was that code word for, you know, not openly talking about being gay, which is something I had to really grapple with in putting this show together. He wrote extensively about grappling with his queerness, about his desire, about different formations of love, about gender. So yeah, it was how to pull this out in the show was a real question for me. Okay, I think I will, there's Glenn Ligon paired with James Baldwin. I think we can show the video. And if we need to go back to any of these, I'm happy to. So before you play it, Thea, just a quick setup. This video, it's incredible about how something guides you in terms of duration, and energy can guide you in the creation of something. So we were putting together all the clips that we wanted for this montage, the video surround. And what's funny is we had kind of put it together, and then I had overlooked this video until I'd gone back into that archive for the 5th time. And I think when you see it, you'll see how I was truly unmoored. But I feel like it was a way that it was delivered to me to say, this is actually how you end this thing. Okay, thank you.
We need you back. We miss you very, very much. Company's doing fine, so you need not worry. Everybody's taken care of. But we miss you. We want you to get better so you can come back and work back us again. Yeah. Hi, Alvin. It's Brooklyn Housewife. I hope you enjoyed your fruit. As you can see, I'm warming up diligently at 15 minutes. And take your time. I don't want you to hurt that. Because you have to get better. So take your time and we love you. Bye. Alvin, where are you? This is a job something else. Look at the floor out. You are right on the black floor. Have you ever heard such a thing? We're having a great time. See you next. Hi, Alvin, from the new kid on the block. I'm Nishu. I can't wait to work with you. I'm having lots of fun working hard and just learning, and just can't wait to see you. I hope you feel better. Bye.
But it's nice and bright, warming up.
You guys soon. We miss you.
We miss you. We'll see you soon, okay?
I just got here. I know you very well. Can't wait to see you. Everything's going good on the tour.
She's busy warming up. Yeah, say hello.
Hi, Alvin. We miss you so much. I know you've heard it 5, 10, 20, 30 times. I really miss you. I always told you you're like a father to me, a friend, and what you want. And really means to see you again. I just thank God that you're okay. And Danny says hello. My husband says every time he goes on stage, he thinks about you and he plays the saxophone solo. You're still coming. So we love you. Come back very soon. This is like a Get that goddamn foot.
He's just gonna take your money.
Yes, but see, this is modern technology.
Well, thank you very much. Say hello to Elvis.
Hi, Elsa. How are you? Mrs. Baxter, you know me. Actually, this is Alexander. You call me Mrs. Baxter, so as long as you do that, I hope you're feeling better. And we miss you. We really do. Oh, please. Come back soon. Get well. Hi, Alan. How are you? See you soon, okay? Bye.
Where's Zola?
Just go back out.
I have to do myself.
Hi, Alvin.
Miss you. I'm off today. Through the mirror. Come back soon. We'll see you probably in Los Angeles.
I first saw him dancing in the Broadway.
Oh, yeah, sorry. This is from the archive. There's some good stuff in there. So come see the show.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. You can hear me? Yeah. Thank you, Leon and Julie, for gathering us together, and of course, my co-panelists. It's beautiful to see these projects back to back. I remember seeing the My Barbarian show and being so impressed, I mean, of course, with their work, but also with the spatial configuration of the whole thing. It was so dynamic that I couldn't leave. I just spent so much time with that project, so beautiful to hear about it. Okay, so during my time, I'm going to present also a few projects. A few projects that span time and place in order to map out a curatorial arc and then draw out some concepts that inform my thinking. Specifically thinking about how the theme of curating queer duration for me contains an investment in queer performance and its political imaginary, and it signals to a mode of working as a curator that is committed to relations of intimacy and accountability. So I guess, as you may have noticed from my bio, I work collaboratively with people who are very close to me, including my sister, or with people with whom I've developed very long-standing relationships, so that's very important. So the concept of care is in the etymology of the term curating, but for me, it's located very much within a personal learning process of working within an intergenerational lineage of queer artistic production around care and around conditions of shared and uneven vulnerability. So in the recent years, I slowed down some curatorial projects and took on more kind of organizational level work at HR because I was completing my PhD work, so completing no longer a candidate, very much done, and, and wrote a performance studies dissertation within an art history program, so very much felt that distinction. So I have to say that it's very much a joy to be here and to return home in some ways. So recently I've been reflecting a lot on how artists invested in the aesthetics and conditions of risk via endurance-based performances propose models of care, so risk and care not as antithetical to each other, and how centering a politics of vulnerability propels coalitional imaginaries, queer abolition as one example. So thinking of yesterday's panel, last night's panel with Julie, Simon, and Jonathan, I've been in dialogue with Julie for over a decade now, and the last years have been writing about Julie's practice. And I connect this to the very long ago experience in 2011 of assisting in the production of Honey at Lace, all the way to the recent performance at the Whitney, Hold Tight Gently, and how care in these works, one person committing to another far past the edges of exhaustion, takes place within an asymmetrical exchange that does not demand kind of equal reciprocity. So I'm very much interested in that dynamic, both within performance and within curatorial modalities that wrap vulnerability and contingency into the logic of projects that don't necessarily insist on finality or at least define resolution as always conditional, and that are deeply relational and collaborative. So back in 2015 at LACE, I worked with the Los Angeles-based artist Rafa Esparza to present a 3-month evolving installation titled I Have Never Been Here Before. So Rafa is now well known for his use of Adobe material and collaborative production processes, but this was the first time that Rafa brought in the Adobe into the gallery. Through the project's duration, he, along with a team of family, new and old friends, hand-built Adobe outside along the LA River, and then twice a week would transport it to Lace, where they were constructing a large-scale elliptical structure with the intent to cover up all corners and all white walls. All of this taking place within gallery hours, within public hours. So visitors would either encounter Esparza working on the structure, or when he was off-site, they'd see an in-progress installation. So here you see the first days of the installation. Adobe cubes are contained on palettes containing minimalist art, very much void of its obsession with universality, and then the form gradually unravels throughout the duration of the exhibition. So unlike Esparza's later projects, or a majority of them, here we were really interested in focusing on the installation's durational unfolding, its shifting spatial conditions, and the coordinated labor of this process as an intervention into the gallery, because it was entering in with a radically different temporality. So the process moved at a slower pace, according to the needs of the Adobe matter, with uncertainty and chance, and it was propelled by a logic that was incommensurate with institutional protocols that demand kind of distinct timelines and fixed deliverables, which was very much my kind of position negotiating these two. The goal was to build a 10-foot high structure, but it was unclear whether we'd meet this goal. We had mornings where we'd start with text messages discussing the weather, the night's rain before, and what this meant for the Adobe material, how it impacted the shape of our day or week. As a brown vernacular building material predominantly used in Mexico and the Southwest and Latin America, Adobe offered a symbolic critique of the white cube and its attendant logics of neutrality, and it also served as a material intervention that was entering into the space with unruly, animate, and contaminant matter, which was why a lot of, or some institutions later who were collecting institutions could not host the installation inside their galleries. And we also thought of it as a placemaking experiment to bring in and kind of present the works of other queer artists of color. So I worked with Rafa and curator Robert Crouch at the end of the exhibition's duration to activate with the space with artists working in performance and experimental sound to invite audiences to experience the space differently, to stay a bit longer, to lay down, to cluster together, and to be inside the art instead of at a safe distance. So following this work the same year, and yeah, the maybe next few projects that I did at Human Resources were very much interested in addressing queer histories and present day queer politics through new commissioned solo works. So at HR, because of our collective structure and minimal bureaucracy, we have the ability to weave in projects with shorter lead times. There's some more flexibility. So our projects can also have a kind of more responsive, kind of immediate response to social events. So in 2015, the political climate of fighting for marriage equality amplified existing debates about whether gay subjects should be good citizens or not, meaning the strive for state inclusion and legitimacy as the primary political destination. So days after the federal legalization of same-sex marriage, I worked with artist Ohan Breiting, also my partner, to present a video and analog film installation depicting queer-identified close community members who discussed the ideals, constructs, and practices around family, kinship, marriage, as interrelated to experiences of migration, adoption, care work, and critiques of the privatization of lifestyles and material benefits. So visitors would come in and were invited to sit on the bench that was placed directly in the middle of the space. And it was positioned between two 16mm projectors of sunrise and sunset that was filmed on the same day. So they were suspended or kind of placed in a kind of a state of temporal suspension. And they would watch and listen to an alternating group of individuals, including Julie Tolentino, Samuel Vasquez, Dean Spade, Taisha Paget, gathered along the horizon line of the dinner table into a chorus of differing, even contradictory perspectives on the political pragmatism of the present and the question of who determines belonging. So collectivity as an evolving practice is threaded throughout my various projects. In 2011, I presented a 2-day performance program at the Hammer Museum titled At Night the States, co-curated with Shoghig Halajian. So this project featured performance experiments in improvisation and participation. So here you see an image of Simone Forti, Keon Gaskin, the Artist Theater Program, Taisha Paget with the dance collective We Are Paper, We Are Trees, who blend dance and social practice through the temporary school and open rehearsal structure. So Susie and I were interested in what might happen if audiences, or if we drew audiences into artistic processes of improvisation and how it might bring about a different mode of witnessing. With each performance, we also altered the configuration of the space to shift how artists and audiences interacted. wondering what are the spatial and social conditions that spur the curiosity or desire to enter in, and what are the conditions that prevent one from feeling like they can or want to. So the curatorial effort, as it manifested in the space, was very much kind of driven by experimentation, driven by improvisation's ongoingness and its dynamic form. Also, I think about the call to participate and join the art within curatorial processes, how my experiences of making Adobe bricks with Rafa or performing in one of Julie's works in 2015, Procession X, where I fumbled into a new somatic vocabulary, opened up my thinking as much as the kind of discussion or planning of projects. Okay, so in 2018, the next year, I continued my collaboration with Susie, and we presented the exhibition, A Grammar Built with Rocks, at Human Resources, and also at the One Gay and Lesbian Archive with some adjacent programming at Red Cat. So the project stemmed from our research into the photographic archives of Chavez Ravine, a neighborhood in Los Angeles, now called Elysian Park, which is located 5 minutes from Human Resources location. So the area historically consisted of generations of Mexican-American families since the late 1800s who self-built their homes and then were violently evicted in the 1950s. Here, this is an installation by Colleen Smith. So we were interested in revisiting the archive because images of police force and community-led enduring protests really overdetermine how we understand this site. And we're inspired by the fact that glimpses of everyday life and daily routine had covertly slipped into the archival collection. So what developed was a project that addressed sites historically impacted by settler colonial and capitalist dispossession through a queer feminist lens that centers daily embodied practices as resistance, while exploring how artistic research processes can re-articulate the nested past, present, future lives of place. This is a work by Sandra De La Loza, LA-based artist, who developed new work through a walking as research methodology, wandering through the site of Chavez Ravine and documenting the still existing foundations of the original homes. We put this photographic series in dialogue with the work of Dar, whose work I unfortunately don't have an image of here. So Dar, Decolonizing Art and Architecture Residency based in Palestine, who presented a video work that examines the gaps within cartographic processes. Specifically, the 1949 meeting between Israel and Jordan, where they drew ceasefire lines on a map using a pencil with thick and soft graphite. The pencil line, when it was translated to life size, created more than 100 meters wide of Palestinian land that had kind of evaded occupation and ownership. So put together, these works propose affinity and a sense of duty across seemingly distant and disparate realities, while also amplifying the fact that violence is never a totalizing force. So within the width of the line or in the proud stance of architectural fragments, one can outline the shape of ongoing and enduring refusals to be erased. So the project's two exhibition sites had different spatial logics and thematic focal points in order to reflect the conceptual framework of interlocking yet distinct conditions that shape place and place-based resistance. So while at HR, we imagined the exhibition as a kind of landscape, a vast landscape to wander through, at the One Archive here, we dispersed the works throughout the library, across its 2 floors, and within people's work and research routines, very much kind of interrupting people's daily kind of experiences of the place. So this curatorial project has since expanded and actually extended to today. It will take the form of an anthology of text-based and visual works to be published by Wendy's Subway early next year. And it's really held together by the concept of relations across borders and across locales. So in one study, in an article by artist and writer Mashinka Firuz Hagopian, she discusses the intimacies between Armenian, Artsakhi, and Palestinian resistance movements through the repetition of catastrophe across vast temporalities. So 1915, 1948, today. In another work, artists Colleen Smith and Ryan Clark move across and through disciplinary divides, discussing the entanglement of Black studies and Earth studies from their respective homes in California and Louisiana. So if we think about the distinction made early yesterday in the introduction between time as mechanical clock time and duration as lived time, we see that duration is also site-specific. It's our daily rootedness in place. And this attunement to place, as Colleen and Ryan write, is how we learn to live in ephemeral relation with the lived environment rather than imposing permanence, solidity, and legibility. So I'll end with their profound words. Thank you.
Hi, hello. Good morning. It's a real honor to be here with all of you and with my colleagues. I put this together. I guess it's a kind of collage sort of story of a participant and how artists, particularly Julie Tolentino, kind of made it so, if that makes sense. Toward the end of our inaugural season in 2003, participant presented Charles Atlas's Instant Fame, an exhibition that centered the performative identities and dynamics of collaboration that have long distinguished Atlas's work, evolving from close working relationships, friendships, and often immodest creative contexts such as the East Village and London club scenes of the late 80s and 90s. Early in the organization's life, Atlas spontaneously shared his chosen family. His curatorial offering was an evolving live exhibition consisting of no existing artwork, but of many existing relationships. Working outward from his social world, Atlas developed a particular amalgamation of video and performance. With technology, this grew compellingly into live video. When approached with the idea of a video retrospective, he chose instead to mount a video studio in which he created live portraits every day. More than a live exhibition or evolving video work, Instant Fame was a nonstop performance marathon, an improvisational family portrait. The moment we went live each day marked suspended time. We lost track of it. Although we had drawn up a schedule, no one was ever asked to stop. Atlas was usually at his best when the day was ending, so we'd keep going. Helping people get ready for their sitting became our job, and this experience shaped the way we wanted future exhibitions to be. Unpredictable and sometimes virtuosic by accident. When first writing about instant fame in its aftermath, the piece I wrote started, and ended as well. We are the people, and the time is now. The people to which I referred were listed in a footnote, the transcribed names of the 3-week appointment log for Atlas's exhibition. Reflecting on it later, I requested to borrow a prompt from Every Ocean Hues that went, "What is time if not activism?" For Atlas's 2018 exhibition at the Kitchen, which was called "The Past is Here, the Futures Are Coming," he returned to footage from Instant Fame to make a work titled 2003. In a billboard-sized projection, I don't actually have pictures of it, I'm just gonna describe it. In a billboard-sized projection, the video portraits were configured within a structure that included found cable news footage, also from that year, revisiting the invasion of Iraq, the beginning of the Iraq War, and taking, as one critic observed, quote, "a sphinx-like approach to the passage of time." And in a companion work called The Years, Charlie made a compilation of 4 decades of his own moving image work that, quote, "archived a world lost to HIV/AIDS." Every Ocean Hues in their collaborative text, Uncounted, which serves as a script and prompt to consider, quote, "a vocabulary of movement, margins, and trespass," ask questions about what is unseen in time, alive time in institutions, and the politics of transitions. To their question, what is time if not activism, I imagine Atlas might propose, and this was the title of a work, "Scary, Scary, Community Fun, Death." So this is part where, well, I'm just gonna keep going, sorry. Let's see. In the Blur and Breathe books, a lecture by Fred Moten given in honor of Jose Munoz. This took me a while to try to transcribe from this talk. Moten touches upon the blur, the slur, aesthetic indiscretion, the materiality of shade, the charged space of public sex, a queer phenomenology of perception, or a queer kind of loitering, as recalled in Munoz's writing, through the refracted mirror, prism, and lens of writer Samuel Delany and many, many, many other things. Speaking of alterity as an already lateness or belatedness, a value system that is anachronistic, modeled on another time, past or future, it's hard to tell. Newness is haunted by the old and necessitates long-time political imperatives to seek out tools to create and make claims to describe alternative worlds. I'm saying all of these things so I can share my favorite line ever that Fred said, which is that performance studies is embarrassed of performance. So the images I just scrolled through were from a work also from 2003. So I'm lingering on our sort of first season where artists really re-delivered what the exhibition format consisted of, but really to get us to thinking a little bit about Julie. So yeah, this is called If I Could Wish Something, which I'll just describe briefly. It's basically, if I go back, oh, it doesn't want to go back. Sorry, no going backwards. It's basically a reenactment of a still photograph from Liliana Cavani's The Night Porter, combined with a sound excerpt from Joseph Luzzi's The Servant, and just to describe how this hour-long piece was made, where the two artists basically tried to kind of extend a excluded production still and make it into sort of a durational performance that was videotaped at Anthology Film Archives. So it did demand intensity and endurance, but its final product was an installation. So yeah, here we go. Spirit of proximity, intimacy, and commitment to live exhibition formats was truly expanded by Julie's For You, a site-specific installation and durational work which has already been touched upon and referenced because it was important. So I'm going to keep talking about it. A performance for one viewer at a time. I think we also mentioned that same year, which was the first Performa, Julie also performed a true story about two people. So we're in 2005. For You, spare installation, lacking artifice, was allied with everyday experience. Although the viewer's presence was intrinsic to its operation, For You examined the solitary rigors of resting, waking, moving, with Julie performing subtle actions alone and with others for entire days at a time. So again, like, this is how in these early days we learned how we wanted exhibitions to be, and artists like Julie helped us unfold in real time what we thought was kind of the point of participant for a while. So I'm almost at time, so I'm just going to go through. There's a true story. I'm also including, I'll just say what these are since it's, so this is Julie and Ron Athey. Overall title was called Resonate, Obliterate, but, oh, sorry. Here we see Julie archiving one of the cycles through a simultaneous physical recreation as part of The Sky Remains the Same. I would mention here that we house the remnants of this performance, which then became part of Tolentino's participation in the new museum's 2013 performance, archiving performance. We saved everything. So as we kind of get closer to the present, I think I was just trying to speculate a little bit about exhibitions that did not contain performance, but instead used, I guess, the viewer's attention. Oh, sorry, these are from my cell phone, but it's like the family in the in-process Ames room, which I won't go into. Oh, there it is. It's all finished. Hag. This is, 2012. I won't get into it now. Too much to say, but yeah, just creating alternate worlds in which one makes sense. And then I'm going to just go really fast. This is Narcissister. This exhibition was called Studies for Participatory Sculptures. I put in Constantina Zavatsanos, L&D Motel. I put this in because we just really wanted to live stream bloodletting. And this is an image of our final show at Houston Street, which was called Black Lips performance called 13 Ways to Die. And, you know, this kind of medley was to kind of speculate a little bit about, you know, the sort of crossing between like live exhibition formats, durational performance, and the archive, which, you know, I can't really say too much about in this amount of time. Thanks.
Thank you so much. You've given us so much to kind of chew on and ruminate, especially as we move into the afternoon panels and performances. I'll keep my kind of thoughts and ramblings, literal ramblings, as short as possible in the hopes of, you know, just thinking alongside of you. I mean, what a gift, really, as an emerging curator. I'm old, but newer to this. Yeah, what a gift to learn alongside you and to think about really queer curatorial practice or curatorial practice writ large as a kind of queer world making inside, alongside, in collaboration and care with artists, period, performance artists in particular, queer and trans performance artists of color, maybe most specifically. Yeah, it's incredibly powerful, right, to think of the work that curators do alongside these artists who very much work in ephemeral modes, right, who work in duration. How do curators attempt to capture without containing the dynamism, the improvisation, the looseness of performance in, you know, within the kind of exhibition spaces that we are contained in? So the question that I'm kind of thinking about that I would love for you all to respond to however you'd like in conversation with each other, even since there is some overlap with the artists that you're working with. Is, Adrienne, you were saying when you were building the Ailey exhibition, right, you were thinking about how to keep him close. And that kind of resonated with what Joe was talking about in terms of care and intimacy and the kinds of radical closeness in their way of curating. And I think the ways that all of you curate, which is very much in deep, long-term relationship and collaboration with other curators and artists. And I'm just really interested in the ways that you all, different strategies perhaps that you have taken either with these projects or some of the other ones that you couldn't go through, of how to keep these artists close, again, without kind of limiting or containing the liveness of their work. So that could be either through the kinds of specific exhibition practices or even how you start that practice, even with living artists or with artists who have passed on, right? How do you approach the making of these queer performance exhibitions? I would just really love to hear a little bit more about that.
Maybe I'll start.
Keep close.
So yeah, maybe I won't get to the queerness of it, but maybe it's already in there anyway. But I think I just want to say something generally about curating, which is oftentimes, as curators, we're told that our role is about care. And I think I think one of the things we have to acknowledge is that there are all kinds of different kinds of curators, right? Like, there's no single mode of being a curator. I think oftentimes, too, and you have to find the sweet spot in this, is that because we're told we should be caring for artists or collections, the agency that we have in what we choose to curate and how we choose to stage it, what the experience is often ignored. And I think that we actually, and so it's almost like, are you getting too close to the role of an artist, right? Like, I've done over 50 commissions. Most of those artists had never worked live before. I was the person who had done the working live, right? So like, knowing that line or a kind of intense proximity that can allow someone to actually show up in the fullness of the potential of what their idea is I think the role. And so it like necessitates a kind of intimacy and negotiation and an intense, I always say to artists where I'm commissioning them for work, I often say to them, if at some point you're not totally discomfited by how intensely involved in this I am, then I haven't gone far enough. Because it is about trying to realize something that we haven't seen before in their body of work, in our field. I feel like this is a very particular energy that happens in the realm of making things that we experience live. And also acknowledging that they're many faceted. But yeah, I think the agential part of this is something that we should be much more direct about. So I want people, when they come into my shows, to be like, this is a distinct show. Like, this feels different. I feel sensually implicated. I might feel choreographed. Somebody said that the music in Ailey was emotionally manipulative, and I thought that was great. I mean, I thought that was amazing. I was like, can I get it on a t-shirt? But yeah, I'll stop there.
Thank you.
Just to build off on that, yeah, radical intimacy. So for me, in most of my projects, I mean, I've been really excited about working on new commissions because of this kind of the closeness that it warrants. And very much getting involved early in the thinking of artists' work. So For example, with Rafa, we had long conversations about what the project might be, and it was kind of a sustained conversation. And at some point through those conversations, at first we were planning on very much having the bricks ready, and then through those conversations realized what the actual project was really about. So I've really found a pleasure in the way that curatorial work allows you to get close to an artist's practice, to follow it along a trajectory, and then yes, very much to be able to kind of push at it to see something else that could come out. And for me, I've really, I felt very fulfilled through the process of working with artists early on, presenting projects of theirs, and then still thinking about that, whether it's in writing form or other capacities. So like the shape of my engagement has radically shifted. So every artist I've ever written about, I've produced one of their projects, and that's where the desire of this kind of long-term relationship and thinking comes about. Yeah.
Oh, I guess I would just say, much like in trying to go back to the early days and tell a little bit about what artists taught us, Julie taught us about, temperature and keeping the artist warm enough, and coming up with like a verbal language around safety and appointments. It was a very important lesson early on that obviously, maybe it's too obvious, like taking care of people is much, much more complicated than taking care of artwork. And that's kind of where we wanted to go. And then if I fast forward, what was taught maybe by Tina Zavitsanos about care was stop sending so many emails, stop with the budgets, like let's just be. So we're just in a process of trying to learn what artists are needing in the situations that they've given us. So, yeah.
It's going to open it up to questions, but just thinking and reflecting again on what the three of you have shared with us now. Jose Munoz gets cited, and of course, this is a TAPS conference. How can we get past without talking about Papa Doc? But this question of queer temporality, right? And the queer curatorial temporality, right? Of allowing an artist to be late or to be in process or to unfold or not know, I think is really something unique in terms of not just carrying durational performers into a gallery space, right? But allowing for a different kind of queer intervention, right? Into, as you all were saying, institutional time. And maybe this is asking for too much of giving secrets away, but I'm wondering in your various positions, right, with independent run spaces, your own independent spaces to very large, major American institutions, where do you feel like you have made the strongest intervention, right, into ways of institutional time, right? Like what do you feel like you have contributed through your curatorial practice, right, to pushing institutions writ large to rethink maybe care or water or food breaks or whatever it is? Like, what do you hope, right, your biggest intervention to straight normative art institutional time might be? Knowing that we're up on time and we're getting the time card.
I think one of the things I try to be very sensitive to is that I'm able to do the work that I do at the Whitney because somebody else did something that was a modicum enough to open the door so that when I come in with my set of desires or I want to express my agency, that there's a space where they could at least recognize where I'm going, so that then the work on my part is to then further open it so that, you it's like, in the same way that the archive is always about the future, if we're being very Derridian about it, there's a way in which my presence is also about the future of who can come and do the next thing, so that it won't be crazy to say, yeah, I want an 18 screen projection and we're going to make a film and put it in here, and right, and I need 20,000 square feet, and oh, by the way, we're doing 90 performances and I'm commissioning 12 essays. Like, it's like, oh, okay, like now somebody, if I left tomorrow, could come in and it wouldn't, whatever their thing would be, it wouldn't feel so strange. I also think that I do think there's a way in which, if I'm doing my job well at a place like the Whitney, the artists have no idea what I have to do in order to make whatever their dream is happen in that space. They should never have to know. So that for me is super important. And that means that you have to, like on the Ailey project, for example, I mean, there was a team of probably at least 50 people working on that show. And the various artists that we engaged around that project don't know about the hurdles that we had to do to make it happen. But yeah, I would just offer that.
So I come from experience of working in many or a few small nonprofits, small mid-size, even before I got involved in the arts, actually. I was working more in social service nonprofits, and I really felt that the kind of demand on workers in these spaces is really painful and non-sustainable. And so for me at HR, it's been human resources, it's been interesting. It's been very much an experiment to enter into, thinking about an institution that's organized very differently. And in the beginning, it was quite difficult to kind of get in their pace and working process because I had such ideas around how things should work. To work with a kind of collective structure of 10 curators, 5 or 6 directors, and a kind of shape that also assumes a different temporality, right? So it's volunteer run, so what you really need to rely on, there's moments that people enter in, have a lot of energy and excitement around curating projects, and then they may get tired or interested in other things or elsewhere, and they organically kind of take on a different role or exit, right? So it kind of forces us to have a radical openness in terms of who's coming in, who's already organically contributing and then wants to enter in as a real kind of determining voice in the institution. So that's been it's been an experiment with a lot of lessons that I've really valued. Yeah.
I don't really have that much to say about institutions, but I barely call us an organization.
So we have 3 minutes, and I'm wondering if folks have. It's 11:57. I've got my watch, Melissa. If folks have questions, maybe we can cluster them. So like 2 folks, maybe 3 folks can ask their question. We'll go in a row, and then folks here can respond as they see fit to whatever you want. So we'll leave it to improvisation and chance. Tavia and Kate, any third? Any volunteer? Okay, maybe just these 2.
Thank you all for this wonderful presentation and conversation. My question picks up on what you said, Adrienne, about the 50 plus. I'm particularly interested if you had a set designer that you work with, because there seem to be things that you developed in the My Barbarian, the theatricality that you referred to, that then recur in expanded form in Edges of Ailey. And just curious if there's a person or a team, or like who you had in your posse to get the white cube to turn into the Adrienne Edwards experience.
Sorry. Can we get Kate's question and then we can answer them both? Yeah.
As you know, Thea and I are part of the mega institution, so the Whitney seems very cozy in comparison to Brown and to Penn, where I was previously. I'm interested in the aftercare within an institution. So not just the aftercare of the artist when there's maybe a rupture in the institutional temporality or the institutional space in a performance capacity in a gallery, for instance, but how you care for the staff, the team, everyone who works to realize our spaces, the people that are cleaning, the people that are caring for the walls and the paint. Not because I know the answer to this, but just because as Thea and I think more deeply about how this is possible within a mega institution, if you, Adrienne, and then of course anyone else who's within smaller or maybe just one person institutions in the case of Lia at times can contribute to a conversation around aftercare as well. A kind of suturing maybe. There's like the rupture and then the suturing and how that creates new borders.
Yeah. Okay, so we got the two questions.
That's okay. Okay. I'll try to be fast. I think because it's a more complicated question, I want to talk about this idea of suturing or wounding or something that is implied in your language. Yeah. I think one of the things that also goes under acknowledged when, and I can't speak for others, but in the way that I work, is that I'm asking everyone to arrive with me and the artist into a space of the imagination. And if you are working in the space of an imagination, meaning we're not just going with like business as usual, but we're actually going to do this thing differently. Oftentimes there is an immediate like kind of resistance because people have a perception that you're asking more of them. But something really beautiful happens where at least you feel like you're pushing something up a hill or around a bend, and then all of a sudden it clicks. And then they realize, and it usually happens within the first week that you're on the floor, and then they're like, oh shit. Like this thing that I saw on paper or I saw in, oh, now I actually see it. And it is like really the most rewarding part of it, I have to say, is that moment of that turn or that unfolding or opening or blossoming. And in order to do that, you have to take very good care of people. So we do a lot of ordering of lunches. We do a lot of like, your coffee's free today. Here's sweets. Do you need a day off? Like, what can we do? Do you need more help? But I think we're all working at a hunt, like on a project like the Alien one. I mean, you're just like, everyone's full in 150% every day. I think I worked, Natalie, my partner, will know this, 7 days a week for at least a year before we opened. So there's that. In terms of like what the shows feel like, since I knew that I was going to do Ailey from very early on, meaning when I arrived to the Whitney, in some ways I think I was hired to do Ailey, is really like all of these projects that I've been doing are with artists I deeply trusted and felt like were pushing the way we could think about performance. So in some ways, I wanted to work with them on the merits of their work and the timing of which to think about their work, but I also knew that I could play a bit with what I actually often see a show and know what it looks like before it opens, like before I even know what's in it, I'd really try to sit, like for me, sensuality is not just like a word used to describe, it is a space from which I'm working. So I think I maybe did one show that had white walls, that was Blackness and Abstraction. I think it was only because the paintings were black and I was really interested in like them popping in a certain way. But pretty much it's just not, it's a convention within museum making that I feel is very tired and exhausted, and I don't, I say that, and then the next show, for all I know, will be the starkest white with like blue light to just emphasize the whiteness. But yeah, I do not work with a set designer. I actually play probably more of a major role in what my exhibitions look like than most curators. I came up with those islands, those structures, the systems of display, and I have an incredible team. In particular, my real right hand, he's like a translator of my brain because I'm not an architect, so I don't know how to actually make it work. I just know what it looks like. So in some ways, it's very instinctive, but deeply researched is what I would say. So that the desire for what a space should feel like informs, or how I want to experience it and others to experience it, is informed by, the medium itself. Anyway, the show should actually feel like the thing it is about, is what I'm trying to say. This is why exhibitions about performance often fail. Okay. But that said, Jared Huggins is, like a dream, and worked with me and David on the 22 biennial, like when I wanted to do this floating structures, and Jared like figured out how we do that, he's like, Adrienne, those paintings are so heavy, we can't just suspend them. So I was like, oh, I think I have an idea. What if we look at, and I was like, Jared comes back and is like, this is what it could do. This is what it can't do. So it's just like a real deep, beautiful process of usually working against constraints. So that space of like desire to meet the genre on its terms, and the constraints of what a space in a museum can do. And there's so many rules, it's exhausting. But it usually makes it fun.
I didn't want to end with constraints, but here we are.
Constraints are good.
At the end of a time. Please enjoy your lunch break, I believe is what's happening next. Do people get to eat? You have panel at 1, so come back. 1:30, so come back. Thank you.